front and back with some graphs of just to quickly explain or go into a little more detail in case you forget anything I tell you today. I'm in my 5th school year as the CFO for DeKalb. I spent the previous 20 years in private industry accounting, and so just always have had a love for DeKalb. Nick and I talked about this. He was questioning me before we ever left on how long I've been here, what was my past. So he said, "Why did you make the leap?" And I said, "I really have always loved DeKalb from the moment my kids entered the school system. I've always wanted to be on school board because my grandpa was on our local school board forever. And so I thought that was always my end goal, was to be on school board. And when this position presented itself, I thought, well, this is the best of both worlds. I get to do my occupation and sit kind of as a non-voting seat on the board. So jumped at the chance. I thought, I got this. This will be an easy transition. I've been an accountant for 20 years and spent literally the entire first year going, well, what the heck did I just do? It is radically different than private industry accounting because you have to learn the ins and outs of all the different funds, which are really operate like silos, and how the money cannot intermingle between the funds, and what you need to ask the board's permission for, all the state requirements and guidelines. So there's just a whole lot that goes into it, and it's most people don't really know how school finance works, and so I wanted to take kind of a little opportunity to give you kind of a snapshot. So currently we operate with 6 funds. For the rest of this calendar year, they're getting ready to change that. So the general fund currently is the largest, and it encompasses all of our teachers' salaries and benefits, in addition to a few non-cert people. The custodians are in there, maintenance is in there, administration is in there, so superintendent, myself, Wendy. They are transitioning that to the education fund, and that will no longer encompass anyone who is in a non-education role. Those people will move to a different fund, which I'll mention in a minute. So it will truly encompass only what it takes to educate our kids. So it'll only be teachers' salaries and their benefits. It will include principals and their benefits, since they are tied into the education, but it won't encompass mine, Wendy's, the superintendent's. We'll all move to what will become the operations fund. The general fund / education fund, because it's transitioning, that's the only one that's not driven by tax revenue. So it is driven by a school funding formula at the state level that we get so much per child that's within our district. There's a whole lot of different calculations that go into that. There's a complexity factor. There is extra money for CTE courses, extra money for a few of the things I think Mr. Comfort teaches, a few of the things in the ag department. So there are some benefits to teaching things beyond just normal math, science. They want to see that you're working towards improving your kids for that next step, and so they put extra funds towards some of that stuff. So that is kind of the general / education fund in a nutshell. The other funds I'm going to mention are all tax revenue driven, so they come from property taxes that we all pay. The first one I'll mention is what is going to become the operations fund. Currently is the capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement funds. They're 3 separate. They're all being combined into this new operations fund, which now will also take a few small pieces that you heard me mention from what used to be general fund will be operations. So that one is tax revenue driven. We come up with lists of capital items that we want to spend each year. Those are posted during our budgeting process. All of our buses go through a 12-year replacement cycle. So every year we're replacing 5 to 6 buses. You're riding in one of the newer ones that we've mentioned with seat belts. It's propane. Those are directions that we're headed as a district, and have had a lot of good luck since we've started doing that. That's one of our kind of green initiatives. that we've taken on is the whole propane movement. We've been what I will call a leader in that area. Our transportation director, which you'll hear from later, Mrs. Dawson, has been invited to other districts to kind of share our experience. And so it's becoming a bigger movement in the state, and we were one of the first ones to jump on that bandwagon. Have had a lot of good results from it. So that's transportation, bus replacement, capital projects. That new operations fund will now include custodians, maintenance, central office personnel. Again, it's tax revenue driven. That sixth fund, which exists right now and will exist in, it doesn't change in the new funding scheme for next year, is the rainy day fund. And it's exactly what you would think when you think of rainy day. It's for those unexpected expenses. You can put a budget together that kind of accounts for a certain amount of money that you can spend on rainy day. It's not funded by any tax revenue or by the state. That is funded by any excess revenue that you might have in some of the other funds. At the end of the year, you can move that into a rainy day fund. And so that has helped out the district in many cases in the past where we have things that come up that are just unexpected, or there are opportunities that we didn't foresee. And so you're able to kind of use those rainy day funds to address some of those things. So that's a pretty common thing for schools to have in place. We try to keep that fund in a healthy condition as far as the cash balance. The one I skipped is debt service. That one is also not changing from the new funding scheme to, the old to what we're going to in 2019. So debt service covers all of our bond issues that we've done. So you heard Mr. Teeters talk about the brand new school at McKinney Harrison. We don't have $18 million to just build a new school. When we have a large project like that, we go out to the market and we sell bonds to raise those funds. Well, that then becomes a debt service payment. That's also tax revenue driven, so it's pulling in taxes from the property taxes we all pay. The tax revenue, or the debt service, you'll see a graph on the back here that I've included to encompass. Maybe you've heard about the large project that we have going on, or we have had going on for many years, and has recently taken a turn where it's going to be a referendum project. It'll be on the ballot in May. So this graph kind of represents the gray is our current debt service items and current debt service payments. So you can kind of see them tapering off within the next few years, starting with next year and beyond. The red then would encompass what you've heard us talk about, hopefully, with the new project that we want to bring on and improve our not only 612 campus, but it's a renovation inside the middle school. It is a relocation and an increased size for the James R. Watson cafeteria, which is drastically too small for their enrollment. It is addressing their courtyard, which has been unusable for a number of years, and making it more maintenance-free environment that their kids are going to be able to go out there and learn. It addresses the high school boiler situation, which is we need to replace those. So it's a broad bond issuance that we would address many issues. In addition to the exterior 612 campus that that's kind of what has gained the most momentum in discussion that you've probably heard, is that piece of it. So yeah, Deanna. The general fund is funded by per student enrollment. Higher enrollment means extra funds in the general/education fund, which is what funds teachers. So if the graph on the front is a great example to show you, down here on the bottom, 90% of that general/education fund goes straight to teachers' salaries and benefits. So it's a huge amount of money in that very largest fund that goes towards that cost of, if you think about it, that should be the biggest cost, is your people that teach your kids. And so yes, by encouraging new families to come here, people outside the district to transfer in by having top-notch facilities, top-notch staff, top-notch education. Everything you're going to hear about today is not only to provide the best for the kids we have, but to also provide an environment that maybe is enticing for other families to move into the area or to send their kids here. So we always strive to do that. There are almost no school systems who are a closed district, which means they don't accept transfers in. Those closed districts are Northwest Allen, Southwest Allen, East Allen. They're the donut schools around Fort Wayne, and probably I think some of the donut schools around Indy. So they are kind of those districts where they can't even keep up with new homes being built in their district. They're struggling, having enough facilities to do even that. So they can't really accept out of district transfers in. And so those are really the only closed districts that in the area. Every other district will accept transfers in. And so we obviously want to create an environment where it fosters that kind of willingness for parents to want to bring their kids into what we believe is the best district in the state. So that is kind of this graph in a nutshell. But you'll notice this green line at the top when you have a chance to look at this. We wanted to make sure that with this project that we were not intentionally asking our citizens, our taxpayers in the district, for extra tax dollars. We intentionally layered this in as other debt was falling off so the tax rate remains level. Okay, so that's the beauty of this. Yes, it's a large dollar amount. When you hear it, it might take your breath away initially, but we've layered it in intentionally that way so that it will not take an increase in the tax rate.
It almost seems like you've been planning this for longer than just a year.
So it maybe has gained some steam recently with the conversations that have come up and in the paper. It has been in the works for probably 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And it started with a senior capstone project. Montana Seifert did a capstone project on the facilities at the 612 campus and really identified where we could make improvements and provide that excellent environment for extracurriculars, co-curriculars, meaning we're going to have classes in some of these areas during the day. It's not just for athletes. It's for our marching band to provide them a better environment currently all their practices are happening on asphalt, which as you can imagine, when they're practicing in the heat of the summer, which is when they do their main, it gets pretty hot. I mean, the degrees on that asphalt is probably 20 degrees hotter than it is on grass. So we're trying to address multiple areas with this one project. So yes, it's been in the work for a long time, not just recently that you might have heard about it in the newspapers. So any other last minute questions? Because we are literally pulling up to Waterloo right now.
How much did this bus cost?
Propane bus costs slightly more than diesel buses. So it's about, the price tag's usually around 100, 105,000. There are grants for propane buses that we apply for and have received every year so far that bring them down to the price of a diesel. So we literally are not spending any more on this bus than we would be spending on a diesel because of the great grant opportunities with the state.
So we are now arriving at Waterloo Elementary, Principal Julia Tipton, in about 200